so wonderful to see so many of you here. My name is Monica Adolfsson. I'm a life coach, so I work with individual persons and have workshops to have people connect to themselves so they can be who they want to be in all areas of their lives. And this Courage and Compassion event, I was thinking about, courage on an individual level, how, with courage it sort of expands our lives. The world becomes bigger, the more courageous we are. And I thought, how can I, inspire myself and inspire others, to be more courageous? And then I thought, I have this, I'm going to introduce her soon, Patti, amazing friend, and she does such amazing things. I'm actually just going to talk a little bit about courage first, and then we're going to have our conversation with Patti, and then she's also going to answer your questions, so you can hold on to your questions until after our conversation. Okay, so I just wanted actually to start with you. What does courage mean to you? Taking chances, yeah?
Out of your comfort zone.
Yep, for sure.
Outside the box.
Outside of the box. What else?
Standing up to things that you're afraid of.
Yeah, do the things that that's really, really good. Yeah. Anything else?
What did she say?
Oh yeah, she said.
Standing up to things that you're afraid of.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, that's a really, really good one. I think it's brave of you to also say that here in front of all these people. So good for you. Okay, so the word courage actually stems from the Latin word cur, that means heart. So in the beginning, sort of the meaning of the word courage was telling everything from our hearts. Now, we put some other meanings to it, but that was what it was from the beginning. And it's interesting, in all sort of research, when they research, people being courage, and when people talk about themselves being courageous, in every single piece in the research, every courageous act has a piece of vulnerability. And the vulnerability is defined in this work as uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. That sounds so hard, I think, all of it. And so being in uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. Vulnerability actually, is about showing up and be seen when there are no guarantees. And that is the scary part, right? However, we need vulnerability in order to really get connected to other people. And we are all hardwired to be connected, as human beings, to be connected, loved, and feel that we belong. So, what's interesting in our culture, I'm from Sweden, and we have the Swedish gang here. You see all the blondies here. But I think that actually in our culture, in the Swedish culture and American culture, I think this goes, this both goes for that we have a lot of myths around vulnerability. And we're actually swimming around in them, Patti, swimming around in myths of vulnerability. And I just wanted to clarify, those 4 big myths about vulnerability before we go on to Patti here. The first one is, which is a huge one, and I sign up to that one, is that vulnerability is weakness. That's how I grew up. I grew up, we buckled up, we armor up, and we suck it up. No wimping around and stuff like that. And it's interesting in research around vulnerability when people are asked, so what is vulnerability? When are you vulnerable? People say things like, well, it is starting a new career. It is waiting for that phone call from the doctor's office. It is sitting with my wife that has stage 4 breast cancer, and stage 4 cancer, and talking about the future of our children. Does that sound like weakness to you? No, it doesn't. And what is interesting also about this myth then about us believing that, or many of us have believed at least, that it's a weakness is that there are 2 paradoxes also. So Magda, right? When I see vulnerability in Magda, I think it's strength, but I see it as weakness in me. So that's the first paradox around vulnerability. The second one is, what was your name again?
Ivana.
Ivana. I've never met Ivana, but she looks so cool. I would so love to be your friend. And you know, it takes a long time to become friends, but I'm going to hotwire our friendship here, right? I think you know you'd have nice shoes and everything. So let's just be friends really fast, and I'm going to just spill everything I have inside here to you. And there's nothing wrong with it, but it might be so that next day we just like have a vulnerability hangover. That was a little bit too much too soon, sort of thing. And ultimately, vulnerability is about creating connection, you know, building connection. So the second myth is that we think we can opt out of vulnerability. Because you guys, you are a handsome lot. You do vulnerability. I'll stand here and watch you doing that, you know, and I'll be fine over here, and you just do that uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. Yeah. The thing is that we can't opt out of vulnerability if we want deep connections. So that is the second myth. The third one I think is really interesting because it's in today's society is that vulnerability is oversharing. So today, you know, people are sharing all sorts of stuff on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, and we just like, there's too much vulnerability. We don't even want that much. I don't want that intimate details about like famous people that do a lot of things on TV and stuff. But the thing is that vulnerability is not live tweeting your bikini wax. That's not vulnerability. Thank you, Patti. I pay her for that. Like, if nobody else laughs, you laugh. Vulnerability is not sharing what our kids feel about our upcoming divorce on Facebook. That's not vulnerability either. I mean, vulnerability ultimately is about connection and sharing our stories with people that have deserved the right to hear them. Yeah. Okay, but I do overshare, so back to you here, right? So I now really want to be friends with you, right? And I want to hotwire the connection, right? So I do that. I do overshare because I really want to be friends with you. And sometimes we might be attention seeking, you know. Sometimes oversharing might be about not knowing our own boundaries. You know, I don't really know what's okay for me or not, so we are oversharing. Sometimes it might be actually some people, or you know, we might have a story that we feel it's so important to share it that we just have to share it, even though it might be too early and all that sort of stuff. But ultimately, then it is about sharing with people that have deserved the right to hear our stories. The last myth is that we can practice vulnerability in isolation. That means that we go home and we can do it by ourselves. You know, you do it together, I go home and I do it by myself. The problem is, again, that we need, you know, emotional exposure, we need another person. It's hard to go and be vulnerable with someone. It's a lot of work, you know. It's you know, showing all of us, all our imperfections, but it's actually the imperfections that connects us. So that was that about vulnerability. And now we're going to go to the main course. To Patti. I was thinking about Patti and about vulnerability in, you know, what you do. Patti, she swims always according to the English Channel rules, which means that she only has a bathing suit, goggles, and earplugs, and she does that in all sort of crazy cold waters. And Patti doesn't know what's under her, you know, as in animals and all that sort of stuff. She doesn't always know what will happen to her body, how her body will react to all those things. She doesn't, and she's also she needs to rely on other people to help her. You know, sometimes her crew needs to get her up, and she might not even know that she needs to get up. So she needs to have people. That's a really vulnerable situation, you know. So I think it's so appropriate to have you here right now after I talked about vulnerability and all that good stuff. And Patti, she is a kick-ass swimmer. She holds the record, Lake Tahoe, Lake Zurich, and then some others. We're going to go into them too. And she's a fantastic athlete, a wonderful humanitarian, and a wonderful friend. Patti. Can you hear well in the back? Yeah, perfect. And here, we have a little...
Oh, so nice.
There you go. Is it too hard to sit on?
I need to hold on to you.
Okay, we'll look like it looks easy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think you're going to be more graceful than I am.
No, I don't think so. Oh. Anyway, so I talked about vulnerability. So I wanted to check in with you, like what comes up for you when I talk about vulnerability and what you do?
Yeah, a lot comes up. And you said it so well, and thank you for that introduction. That was beautiful. So what I do with open water swimming is very, very vulnerable. It's not only just because I'm not wearing a wetsuit and I choose to swim by English Channel rules. It's the whole experience. I mean, I swim at night, which is pretty vulnerable, but at the same time, it's really beautiful. I mean, it's part of being vulnerable is you have to have courage, but it's also really appreciating what you're doing and looking at the grace and the beauty of it as well. So I think, that's a paradox as well.
Yeah, sure is. In September, yeah, I know. I think we're gonna have to hold hands. I think I'll stand up. That is too crazy for me. I can actually hold on to you.
Thank you.
Let's do this. Here we go.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna use swirl. Yeah. Okay. So, you just in September. When was it in September?
September 25th.
You swam the English Channel.
Mm-hmm.
And you did that in, let's see here, I think I have it here somewhere.
I can help you. 10 hours and 45 minutes.
Perfect, thank you. Thank you. And I actually tried to really find some like information about how many people have done this swim, how many women have done this swim.
Yeah.
And I couldn't really find any good source, but I sort of took a couple of them and smashed them together, so it's not 100, but 100%, but around 1,400 swimmers have ever done this. And those 1,400 have together done it 1,900 times.
Yes.
Yeah.
People have done it multiple times.
Yeah.
As crazy as that sounds.
And Mike, what did you say? I think that 3,000 or something actually have climbed Mount Everest. So it's actually many more people have done that climbing than done what you've done. I think that is really, really cool.
Thank you.
And I actually would be interested to hear a little bit about the preparations.
Yeah.
And actually the actual swim as well. But I must have, because Patti is very humble, so I'm going to tell this story that I think is so great. So Patti when she was swimming the English Channel, she passed a relay group of guys. And her pilot in her boat, he just like, let's screw with them a little bit. So they took her very close to these guys in this boat. And that boat, they were so quiet when this woman, silent. I think that is amazing.
As I swam past.
Yeah.
Did you wait?
I did. I tried to be friendly. No.
They didn't appreciate that.
They filmed me. That was it.
Yeah.
It was pretty funny actually.
Yeah. Is that not amazing? It was like a couple of how many guys? 5, 6, 7? 6 guys. Yeah. Oh, I would so wave.
So what did you say? Bye.
Yeah, exactly. See you later in a couple of
I
hours.
waved and then I was on the mission. Keep doing
Yeah.
it.
So okay, so tell us a little bit about that.
Do you want me to start? You want me to start with the preparation?
Yes.
First? Okay.
Yes.
So prepping for any kind of marathon. So we refer to this as ultra marathon swimming. And so just a little bit of terminology check here. Like a marathon swim is a 10K, like you'll see in the Olympics. And so when we start talking about distances like the English Channel, it's 21 miles. It could be 23 miles. There's a swim around Manhattan, which is 28 miles. So those are really considered ultra marathon swims. So there's a lot of training that goes into it. But, I love swimming. And when you love something, I find a community that I swim with. I swim in the pool with the masters, they're just awesome. And that's really important to me because it helps me with technique and being more efficient. And then I swim with an open water group down in the San Francisco Bay. So it's an amazing group of people. They love going swimming. They're, we're all a little bit crazy. We get a sauna. We have a lot of fun with it. And then I swim down to Monterey Bay as well, and I swim in a couple of lakes to train. So I really train, the peak of the training, I'm swimming twice a day. I swim in the morning before work, because I work full time, and I swim after work as well. And then I also do dry land strength training, and a whole other component of this training is also mental training. So there's a saying in marathon swimming that it's 80% mental, and that's actually really true. I think people who run can probably relate to that, or who cycle. I mean, there's a lot of conditioning that you do, but it's how you think and how you're really handling the pain, how you're handling sort of the dark times. It's just super important that you have tools that you can pull out and really lean on. So for me, training actually involved meditation. I go to workshops, I go to retreats, I do yoga. So that's super helpful to me. So it's really holistic. It's not just I train to put on more muscle. It's also training mentally, which again, I have to really lean on a lot. So.
Yeah, so what else about the English Channel?
So about the swim itself?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So the swim was amazing. This has really been a difficult year. The success rate of English Channel swims is usually, they've gotten it up to where it's about 80%, because historically, as you mentioned, there's been a lot of attempts and not everybody completes it. And through better understanding of nutrition and training techniques, a lot more people are doing it and are successful. However, this year, the weather was really terrible. So they only had a 50% success rate. And my pilot particularly, this is why Neil was so funny about the relay, he personally had only had 50% of his swimmers finish. And he was really honestly upset about it. Like, he's so invested in swimmers being successful. He's going to do whatever. And the pilots sort of like compete against each other, which again was why he brought me close to that other relay.
Look at my chick,
swimmer.
right?
Yeah, look at my chick. Look at my American chick.
Yeah.
My American skirt, yeah. And so it was a lot of fun. And he really has a great sense of humor. So I am not joking. They threw tea bags at me and banana peels at me, like anything that's biodegradable, just to be clear. There's no garbage left in the shell. But it was so much fun. And then my friend Erin, who's here, who kayaked, who's Northern Kayak, she was a crew for me. You guys, they were amazing. She was on the spot, Erin. They put on costumes. So I have a crew with me, which is really a part of this, like being vulnerable. I mean, I've committed to do this and I've trained hard, but I also rely on people. There's a big vulnerability with that. I mean, I have people who are on board and I'm asking them to spend a whole day with me. They're going to get seasick. I mean, it's not entirely a great experience. So, they're with me, but they make it a lot of fun, and it's really, really important to me to have that, because you're so sensory deprived. You got your head in, and you're swimming for 30 minutes. I feed. I'm not allowed to touch the boat, so they're essentially tossing a bottle at me. I take it down. I can't stop for very long because the currents are pushing you. You can go backwards. So it's not very social, but so having my crew, like, they, throwing things at me and telling me quick tricks was really just huge. It was super helpful. But it was really dark moments, for sure. Like, we got about halfway over. My crew tells me they can start hearing them speak in French. That was so motivating. But then I kind of and I had a lot of jellyfish. So, I should as a side, I'd say I'm very allergic to jellyfish. I carry an EpiPen the boat carries an EpiPen when I swim. So that was very unnerving for me. That I literally was like, I don't know if this is going to stop the swim, because I had jellyfish repellent on, but was it going to work? And so all these things kind of go through your head. So kind of leaning back what I said earlier about mental tools, you have to have a way to push that stuff out of your head. And so getting to starting to see France was super motivating. Like that was, but at the same time, you run the risk of like swimming too hard, and it's still another 10 miles away. So you have to temper your thoughts too. You can't just get overly excited and start to sprint and realize you've got another 4 hours to go. But the swim is a lot of fun. I mean, I know that sounds completely crazy, but I really did have a lot of fun. And I was fortunate. Obviously, I finished it. Not everybody who swam that day, including that relay, didn't finish. The weather changed. Things happened. People maybe didn't train as much as they should. Maybe they had an injury. So it was only 12 boats started and only 2 finished. So it was. Wow. So I'm very
That's
grateful.
Amazing.
Yeah, I had a great crew. I had a great crew.
She's I'm friends with her.
Starting to twist.
Yeah. So a big piece of courage is actually also failing. Failing and trying again. And I know that there's one specific swim that is specifically dear to you, just because you actually tried it a bunch of times.
Yeah.
I know that this is the swim from Monterey Bay to Santa Cruz.
Santa Cruz to Monterey.
Santa Cruz to Monterey. And only 3 people have ever completed this swim. It's crazy hard. And actually, they're all 3 women.
All women?
Yeah.
I keep telling my
Yeah.
guy friend.
And so you also have the record for this one, and that was doing it in 13 hours in how many degrees?
I have to remember correctly. 59, 60.
59, yeah. Really cozy.
She keeps me honest, you guys. So
Yeah.
I'm just a swimmer.
Yeah.
The whole story, Erin has it.
So you actually attempted it
Three
times.
On the fourth time I
Yeah.
did it.
So I just wanted to.
Yeah.
That is so interesting to hear. You know, what made you, what motivated you to go down and do it again and again, and how, you know, what kept you going?
Yeah, it's such a great question. So just a little bit of history about Monterey Bay. That bay, as she was saying, like the first person who did it was a person by the name of Cindy Cleveland. She did it almost 35 years ago. So it had not been, maybe there were a couple of attempts since when I came along. And I remember swimming in Santa Cruz and looking across that bay and just being totally like mesmerized by it. I just thought it was like an amazing thing to do, and I wanted to swim to the other side. And it's a little bit of sickness that we have. We want to always swim to the other side. And so I connected with somebody who's a coach down there, and he runs relays. Yeah, he runs relays across the bay with the college kids. So he was the right person to talk to. We started brainstorming on how I could do the swim. So there's no association, there's no pilots, there's no boat available. I mean, I really had to kind of start this and pull this together, which I love doing. It's a lot of problem solving. And so the first attempt, I'm laughing because we learned so much from the first attempt. The first attempt we did, and I started at 3 in the morning, which was smart because we had to account for tides and all this kind of stuff, which wasn't so smart because we learned quickly that the jellyfish rise at around that time. So I started to swim to jellyfish, and this is when I didn't know I was allergic to jellyfish. Okay, this is how I learned I was allergic to jellyfish. So, and it was a year that there was just this major bloom of jellyfish. They're beautiful, right? They're the sea nettles you guys see in Monterey Bay Aquarium, right? Absolutely beautiful. It is like swimming in an aquarium. It's so beautiful. However, when you get stung over and over again, it's not the stings that's the problem, it's the toxin. So when you get all that toxin in your system and it's designed to actually paralyze fish, it has an effect on you too. And what's hard for swimmers is it affects your ability to regulate your body temperature, which is a big problem at like 58-degree water. And then it starts to affect, like if you start to have an allergic reaction, your tongue is swelling, all this kind of stuff. So the first one I got halfway. And to your point, I mean, I was starting to go hypothermic, and I really was determined to keep going to see how far I got. My crew had to pull me. So talk about being super vulnerable and really surrendering to people around. Like I wasn't going to argue. Like they knew best. They had a better understanding of what was happening. So they pulled me out. And
can you just tell, because this is so interesting,
Yeah.
Can you just tell us how they knew that you had to get up?
Sure, yeah. So what happens with hypothermia is you start to, first of all, swimmers start to slow down, right? So I swim at a certain pace, and that one of the things they do is they monitor my pace. There's a couple of things that my crew does, and one of them is a stroke count. So when my stroke count started to go down, they continue to monitor it, try to see if there's a way to get me back to swimming to my normal. That might be feed me, like they'll sort of try all these diagnostics, like maybe it's low blood sugar, maybe if we just give her some hot tea, that'll, get her. Well, it was a steady decline, and so they reach a point where, like, if I start at like 76 and I'm down to 59 in terms of stroke per minute, I mean, I'm done. I'm just not going to get better. So for safety's sake, because another thing happens with hypothermia is that you can go unconscious, and you're essentially, I'm like from here to the boat, I'm swimming closer, maybe where that pylon is, to the boat, but it's hard for anybody to grab me if I start to go down. So they need to get me out before that happens. So that was the first attempt, and we started to do troubleshooting after that. We started sort of, okay, well, how are we going to avoid it? And then I picked up the phone and called a jellyfish expert, essentially. And he was awesome. I'm like, hi, I'm trying to swim across the Monterey Bay. He worked for MBARI, which is the Monterey Bay Research Institute. Awesome guy. His name is Steve Haddock, and turns out he was a swimmer. So he's like, come on over, we'll talk about it. And as I'm talking to him, he's like, well, of course you're wearing a wetsuit. I'm like, no. And he's like, oh shit, this is a totally different conversation, right? I'm like, oh yeah, sorry, I forgot to mention that. So he really, so talk about being vulnerable. You have to, you start to reach out to other people and share your goal, and you really troubleshoot. And he was amazing. We talked about different ideas. So the next idea was to start later, so got out of the jellyfish rising. But again, another year of tons of jellyfish in the water, and the researchers don't always know what's happening in the water around the jellyfish. The only way they can know is by doing aerial surveys. So another thing's happened in Monterey Bay is the turtles population has decreased dramatically, and they typically eat the jellyfish. So it's kind of a different thing. So there was no way of knowing, starting to swim, and what the conditions were with the jellyfish. So again, I get into another swarm of jellyfish. it's even worse this time. Actually, my allergic reaction was even worse. And I'll never forget getting on the boat, and I'm totally having a difficult time breathing, completely freaked the crew out. I mean, I was not in good shape, but I could definitely feel that. I was like, I'm not doing this, this way again. So after that one, we, more troubleshooting, figuring out how we're going to do this. And lo and behold, there's a scientist in Israel who developed a jellyfish repellent. So I connected with him, and he's like, I'd love to have you test this for me. I'm like, all right. Who else is going to test this, right? He's not going to do it. So I'm like, yeah, I'll get So, and he was amazing. I mean, seriously, this guy was fantastic. So he sent me a ton of products. I mean, I lathered up, and so this is by the 4th attempt. I was fully covered. We figured out a formula where I mixed it with lanolin and desiccant. It is not pretty. I mean, I smell terrible. I mean, it's horrible. I mean, I'm not going to be on the cover of Sports Illustrated. But it was huge. Like, I was literally getting stung, and there were the 4th attempt, which was successful, there were fewer jellyfish. But when I was getting stung, I mean, it wasn't releasing the toxin in my system. It wasn't affecting me. So it was, and for me, why I was so tenacious about it is because I love the problem solving, and I really wanted to do this one. The water in Monterey Bay is so absolutely beautiful. So it was a gift to be able to swim in that bay. And to be able to swim, it sounds kind of crazy, but to swim over the canyon, you guys all know there's that huge canyon, and that's really what makes that, like, it's a different experience. Like, the water is different, the energy is different. On the last one is when we had the whale, is that right? Third attempt, I had this whale. I mean, Aaron is with me kayaking, la 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 la, I was swimming, I'm in my zone, I'm kind of sleeping and swimming, and it's like 5 in the morning. And Aaron's like, Patty, you gotta stop. You never tell me to stop. I stop, I'm like, whoa, what's going on? Literally, like where you're sitting, this whale came up, big eye, sprouted, got covered with whale snot, violated like every sort of marine preserve like restriction of getting close to wildlife completely. And the whale just looked, and it was so beautiful, and just went back. It was super gentle, didn't even, just went on its way, checking out what were you doing? Hey, what you guys doing? And so we've always had wildlife on these swims, and so swimming over the canyon is just part of it. The wildlife is really beautiful, and it was a thrill to finally finish. I mean, I cried in the last, like when I finished, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so relieved.
I don't have to do this anymore.
I might do it again. Yeah. And then my friend Kim did it the 2 weeks later, which was so thrilling to support her. So she's the 3rd person who did it. Yeah,
wow.
Which is great. Yeah. Girl power.
Yes.
Yeah.
Another really cool swim that you have done that I think is a little bit crazy is the relay out to Farallon Island, and you have the record for that one too.
Yes.
She has the record for all the swims. This one is a 30-mile swim, and you guys, how many were you? 6?
Yes.
6, and you completed that in 14 hours and 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's straight to the great white shark.
Yes,
it is.
And that was my question.
Yes,
I was just like, and why?
Why would you do that?
How do you prepare when you know that it's going into the red? This is, I think it's called the red triangle because there's
This is part because they for years they did research, and they go to do research because they noticed that there is like, they call the family of sharks. They thought it was about 12. Now they know that it's much bigger.
Many more.
Than it,
There's a whole.
right. So okay.
That's great to like set up. That was perfect.
Did you know that beforehand?
I didn't actually.
Oh.
There's a whole la. I don't need that. And oh, seriously, actually, because I say la. We do research, and actually, we all kind of you take risks, but you know what you're getting into. The Farallones, so a little bit about the Farallones and the shark behavior. They are there for a season, so they typically show back up in September and they leave around April-ish. And we kind of count on them keeping that schedule. I mean, we hope they do. And we hope that there's no like adolescents like home alone that gets left behind. That's really our hope. But that's a pretty consistent pattern. That's something that scientists know for sure. And and also with sharks, and I talk about this a lot, like I'm more at risk, from jellyfish, quite frankly. The most deadly creature on earth is the box jellyfish. Like sharks don't even make the top 10 list, they don't. There's other creatures like, seriously, like water buffalo, hippopotamus, tigers, and there's a whole bunch of insects, like, ugh, The land is more deadly than the sea, actually. And so sharks are, and they're really beautiful creatures, so they don't want to, so whenever you hear about a shark attack, I mean, I know that the press really plays it up and it's very sensationalized, but sharks never are going back to devour somebody. If a surfer's attacked and there's a bite, it's a release. The only way a shark knows what it's eating or what it's, it's an inquisitive bite. It's with their teeth. They don't have hands. They've never encountered us. They really don't know what we are. So if somebody's bitten, they're released, and then the shark will simply go on its way. It's very, 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 the only swimmer I've ever known to actually be bitten by a shark, and there's someone who lost their foot. And I mean, the shark didn't come back and like finish this guy off. I mean, he was like, oh my God, I'm sure he spit it out. And he's like, oh. So a calculated risk for sure. But that doesn't mean that your mind doesn't play games on you. Like,
So how do you deal with that?
Yeah, well, it's kind of great. So there's such a, well, we always do it for fundraising. So that's one thing that's super motivating for me. All my swims I do for fundraising. It's very, very important for me. I think about that a lot when I swim. Like gratitude and why I'm doing this and how I'm so fortunate to have this mobility, to be able to do this and to be able to pay out to the community and to help. So that's really important for us, and that's really one of the reasons why we do it. And there's a thrill to it for sure. Like there's definitely an advantage around. But the water is gorgeous. It's a great community. So I've done 2 relays. The one you were mentioning was a mixed relay. I've done an all-women's relay. Oh my God, we're like sisters. Like the 6 of us, there's no other bonding experience. Like you're being in like, this is crazy. The swells were 20 foot, I'm not exaggerating. They're breaking over. I mean, it was insane, but we did it. And it was such an amazing experience. So on the mixed relay, we just had different currents. We just have different size. That's how we got the, but I've never been the one to finish at the Fairlawns. That actually would freak me out. I'll be honest. Like, so on the women's relay, we finished at night, so you can imagine you're swimming towards the Fairlawns, you're the last person in, and you got to swim into the cove of the Fairlawns. All right. I was glad it wasn't me. To be honest with you. So it was my friend Kim Chambers, who's the one who finished, and she put on like dark glasses. I think she kind of had this whole strategy of like completely ignoring that she was the Fairlawns. She swam to the buoy, and she touched the buoy. We're like, get the effing boat now. Like you're getting like we're not loitering here. Get on the boat. So your mind still plays with you, even though it's you've intellectually said, I understand the risks and I know what's going to happen, or we have this sort of thought about. There is always a risk factor for sure and fear, and this is where sort of the toolkit of your mental tools, and also the people around you, your support of your fellow team members. You can't just quit in the middle of the relay. Like that's just not an option. You have a job to do. You have to get in. And that's super motivating, for sure.
Yeah.
But everyone's super supportive. I mean, that's what we're here to do. So that helps a lot. So whether you're on a relay and you have your teammates really encouraging you, or if you're a solo and you have your crew.
Like for Erin there, right? Just like, I'll do this for Erin.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm finishing for Erin. Yeah.
But I know also you have some other really cool techniques, like how you work mentally with overcoming cold and fear.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, I mean, you haven't really talked about hypothermia, but I've been in Monterey Bay with a wetsuit, and it's still cold even with a wetsuit, so what do you do to prevent hypothermia?
There's different strategies for hypothermia. I've been doing this for so many years that I've become really acclimated. So I'm always training in cold water, and we call it kind of basting, actually. We get in there and you just kind of soak. There is a lot of research that proves out that there's a layer of brown fat that grows over your muscles with exposure to cold water, so that's insulating. Some swimmers really ascribe to the philosophy of putting on quite a bit of weight. Some people do that. People have been known to put on 20 pounds, 30 pounds. That doesn't really work well for me, but I'm also a little bit different. I swim at a really fast pace. So you guys can imagine, let's say you're running. There's a big difference between jogging and how much you sweat versus if you're going all out. I tend to swim all out. Like, as an example, doesn't necessarily mean I'm doing a sprint across, 23 miles, but it does mean I generate a lot of body heat. I run hot anyway. I grew up in Florida. I will tell you, I'm looking back, I'm like, oh my God, now I understand why I was so freaking hot, right, after workouts. Like, and I was a sprinter in high school, so I would do these workouts at like, midday in Florida. It was horrible. I mean, I was totally overheating. So it all kind of clicked for me. So part of it is that training. There's a lot of mental, to your point you're asking about, like for me what works is I visualize. I mean, I literally visualize that I have a furnace. If I start to feel a little bit of cold in my hand and kind of creeping up my arm and my legs, I'll definitely turn that on in a way like I have this furnace. I visualize like, either hot steam or flames going through, and honestly it does help me. It also takes my mind off of the cold. A big mantra I have, and you've heard me say this before, just because you're in cold water and you feel the cold doesn't mean you are cold. Like, it doesn't mean you're internalizing this cold and it becomes who you are. It's really just like that's a sensation, and then you work through it. So those are the kinds of things that I do. I also honestly find when I think about gratitude and I'm thinking about, I'm grateful for my crew, I'm literally grateful for this technology, I have these, I think through all this stuff, that really helps me to kind of reset. If I'm feeling like, it distracts me from the cold and I kind of settle in and I feel more at ease. So again, I try not to adopt like gosh, I'm feeling cold, therefore I am cold. I never go there. I really try to, but I do know, and this is a serious question because I do know when I'm starting to get hypothermic, and for me that means like the cold has moved up to my elbow, there's no going back. Like I'm not gonna get warm for sure, but if it's somewhere below, I can usually work through it. And I will tell, eventually what's happening if I feel like, okay, and my crew sees it, like they see my stroke count decreasing, I'm definitely getting hypothermic. And there's different stages of hypothermia.
Yeah. That mental strength, right? I remember in Sweden we have this race that is, I think it's the largest, what do you call it, cross-country race, and it's 90K? No, 90, yeah, 90K. And I remember I did that, and I think the whole way I was like, this sucks, this sucks, this sucks. It was awful. I'm not doing that again. But that's different, right? That's different between you and I.
If I can share a story, because you bring up a really great point of being young. So when I was in Dover, there's an amazing community. So Dover is where an English Channel swim is sort of headquartered, and you start there and you swim to France. And there was this gentleman, and everyone's so invested in your success. Like, it's just an amazing community. Like, seriously, the person I hired to pick us up at the airport, take us back, had, like, done the channel. Like, when I left, they put a little, like, congratulations. It was just adorable. Anyway, I met this guy. He was, I think at the time, his name was Joan. I think he was, like, 75 when I met him this past summer. He was telling me this story that he did the English Channel on his 65th birthday, which is pretty amazing. He had attempted it twice in his 20s, and he was not successful. So what made me think about bringing up a story, because when you're younger, you're not having this sort of mental, I don't want to say strength, but this mental sort of fortitude and tenaciousness and the ability to kind of think through it, back to that point about it's 80% mental. He's like the perfect example. Like, he could do it when he was 65, which most people think, like, physically, how could you ever do that? But he had he obviously trained, but he had the strength and the desire, maybe when he was younger, maybe that he just really wasn't that committed to doing it, or he allowed whatever was going on to really distract him to the point where he just was like, I'm done. And maybe it was even subconscious, you just kind of, you don't feel good, or you slow down and your crew's like, I'm pulling you because you look like you're hypothermic. I mean, a whole bunch of things are going on, but again, attempted it twice and he couldn't do it. So I thought that was amazing that as we get older, we really have, more of that wherewithal.
It's the same, I forget her name, Diane?
Diane.
From Cuba to Florida. I mean, she tried it how many times?
She got on her 5th time.
Yeah, and she finished when she's in her 60s.
Yeah, 64. Yeah.
I knew you knew all the details.
Yeah,
so now we can all go and do the English
right.
sign up. Yeah, just sign up. Do a team effort.
Well, you should go back and do the 90K cross-country.
Yeah. Like, oh, this is wonderful. I'm so grateful.
We'll pray for you. Yeah,
Another swim that I think is so super cool is the one around Manhattan.
Yeah, okay. So Manhattan is, I'm laughing because it's just such a funny swim. So who knew that there was a swim around Manhattan, right? I mean, people knew about the marathon. In fact, I took a cab from the airport, and the cabbie was like, why are you here? And I was like, he's going to drop us out of the cab if I tell him why we're here. So I said I'm swimming around the island, and he's like, which island? I'm like, Manhattan. And he's like, what? I mean, he was silent. Seriously, the cabbie was silent for a good couple of minutes. Like, that never happens with a New York cabbie. So they've been doing this swim for about 35 years, which is astounding because 35 years ago the water quality was just horrible. They've done a lot of work, thankfully, around New York and cleaned it up except for the Harlem River. But the way the swim works is you start at Battery Park, and as you guys know, it's the tip, right? So the Statue of Liberty is there. And you swim up the East River, which means it takes you to the Harlem River, up to Columbia, which is the tip, and then you come back down Hudson. So it's a really cool swim because there's the very different sections of New York that you see. You really appreciate how diverse that city is. And the landmarks are cool, and it was really, but I mean, the most dangerous part of that swim were the ferry. Like, seriously, those pilots, they will not stop. They will run you over. They are determined against Coney Island. God forbid you should be in their way. There's no forgiveness for this. Yeah, so should I tell the story about the kayaker? Okay. So I always have a kayaker on my swim, and this is so, it's so classic for New York. And I normally Erin is my kayaker, but she wasn't available. So I got a kayaker who's a volunteer, and this is a really well-run swim. I swear you have to submit a resume. It's like harder to get into college to get into this swim for whatever reason. So I get this volunteer kayaker. I've never met him before. His name is Kevin, and I meet him. I'm ready to go. I'm all gunked up, and he comes up and he looks like he's from Portland. He's got the beard, he's got his kayaker, he's like a tree hugger, transplanted in New York. He was perfect for the job, right? He's like kayak, he's like REI, right? So perfect. And so, we connect, I give him my food, I'm super easy, I feed every 20 minutes, he totally gets it, and then there's a boat with us as well. So we get through the East River, which was pretty normal. I get to the Harlem River, which is just icky. I mean, it's narrow, it's like coffee, it's not pretty. So I'm thinking about all this stuff, like it's icky, and this is just, I'm so not enjoying this at this moment. And I smell cigarette smoke, and I look over, and Karen, he's kayaking perfect, and he's smoking. And then it gets better. And then he's done with the cigarette, he eats pizza while he's kayaking. I'm like, you're gonna pull up Chinese takeout. Like, what? Can I have some of that? It was hilarious. He didn't miss a beat. Like, he was brilliant. And he got me around Columbia. He knew exactly all the points to aim for. He was just an amazing navigator. And it was hilarious. He was the perfect New York kayaker. I loved him. So we come down the Hudson, and it was just beautiful, and ended back at Battery Park. And for me personally, because of the fundraising that I do, and I do fundraising for an organization called Trust in Education, which builds schools in Afghanistan, and I have a connection to that because I tutor Afghan refugee kids. So for me, why it was so poignant to do that swim is it was amazing to start at the Statue of Liberty and then come back around to that. It was just so symbolic, and it was such a cool thing. And I was raising money through that swim for that too. So it was a pretty, a rich experience, all because of Kevin, the New York kayaker, and the Statue of Liberty, and the Harlem River.
Yeah. What a cool thing to do.
Yeah,
so not so many people have done it.
So for 30 years, there's been about 35 swimmers each year. So
wow.
Yeah, surprisingly. I mean, I knew someone who did it 30 years ago. I literally don't know how he's didn't get meningitis. Yeah.
You mentioned trust in education.
I don't want to
Okay, so you say also how important it is
Yeah.
for you to raise money. Say a little bit about trust in education.
Yeah. So Trust in Education is it's based out of Lafayette, so over in the East Bay. And it's an organization that started around that time around Central Asian Institute. People remember 3 Cups of Tea, right? Most of you remember? We all love the story. I mean, it was amazing. It was really tragic. Kind of Greg Mortensen didn't quite manage things as he should have, and that really took away from the amazing work they were doing, because it's important work, right? In Pakistan and Afghanistan, schools for girls, women's vocational training, all these kinds of things. So the person's name is Bud McKenzie, founded Trust in Education Lafayette, really the same model as Greg, but with a lot more oversight, fortunately. So he works on building schools locally. That was a really important part of the model, is getting involvement. And this is pretty common these days. You hear about involving the community when it's doing building schools or other things in other countries, but at that time that really wasn't that common. So they started doing that. And then he does other things too, he does scholarships for street children. There's a really major issue in Kabul now with a lot of street children. The families are so poor and the kids are put on the street and they're not in school. Clearly it's a big problem. So you can adopt a street child, and send them to school. And it's really well managed, so the money that's donated goes directly. I don't think there's too much, maybe 10% is actually put into the overhead and the administration of it. But I love the organization. Bud McKenzie's amazing, and they do great work. And it's again passionate to me of mine, because of the kids that I tutor. They were really the kids that were on the street or were in refugee camps. And we hear about what's happening with refugees now, and it's really serious. If you have a generation of kids that aren't educated, that's the next generation. Of course, of them become the terrorists. And that's because that's the only way they can earn money. It's not because they really believe in hating, other people or another culture. It's just so it's super important.
Yeah. And we actually have a little basket there. If by any chance you would like to make a little donation, this is a free event, and we want you to feel obliged. Is that right? Yeah. But if you would want to, there's a little basket out there. Okay, so about these refugees. So my parents are from Czechoslovakia, and they had to flee from Czechoslovakia in actually Russia occupied Czechoslovakia in 1968, and they fled in '69 because back then if you said what you thought about anything really, but mostly politics and stuff, you got jailed, right? So it was, we have people from Poland here. It's that whole Eastern bloc. And I know that my mom and dad, they were only 23 years old, and they just took the plane while they could to Sweden, and they had nothing. They left their home, they left their culture, they left their language, they left everything. They couldn't even bring anything, because it would be suspicious if they came and brought a lot of stuff. They said that they were going to go to some ice hockey game in Stockholm. But they stay, and I've always thought about like how that is the ultimate vulnerability. You have nothing, you know. You go, and it's not like you want to go. I mean, you would want to live in a free country. So I think that for me personally, having, you know, I was in my mom's belly, so I was like a belly refugee. I can't really relate to that other part because I grew up in a wonderful country where we could say what we wanted to say. But I can understand how hard that must be, right? And I know you work with refugees from Afghanistan that are also, you know, they come from horrific circumstances, you know, so you have such a big heart, you know, you do all this, and then sort of with that little time you've got, you also tutor Afghani refugees.
Yeah, so I have a cool story about the tutoring, which I just really am drawn to. Like, I just think it's amazing when people leave and they come to the United States. They're so grateful to be here, despite, again, what you see in the news and a lot of the sensationalization that goes around it. Every refugee I've ever met is so grateful. Their kids are safe. They're safe. There's no risk of torture. There's no risk of being jailed. I mean, you hear these words intellectually and you just go, yeah, well, jail would be bad. It's like, oh, no, you don't go out of jail. Like when your parent, a dad is jailed, I mean, the family is, there's no breadwinner. And they're not coming home like that. So it's a very, and so the ones that I tutor right now, this is such a cool story. So there's four gentlemen, two that are brothers that are Afghani they went through Russia. They came here 5 months ago, a Syrian, which is super unusual. It's a gentleman in his 30s who's Syrian. His sister's here, but he came on his own. And then, he was admitted on his own. And it's a very rigorous process, you guys. This is at least 2 to 3 years of interviews. And if there's anything remotely suspicious, like an uncle was thought to be affiliated with some other organization, like they don't get in. I mean, it's really, I would imagine some of us wouldn't get in. Like, I have a friend who might have been like a registered communist. Like, I wouldn't, you know, I mean, it's really hardcore. So, and then there's another gentleman he's actually gay and he's from Iran. And what happens in Middle Eastern cultures, if you're gay, you're disowned by the family, and that's actually good, because otherwise you're going to be killed. Like, it's pretty binary. You're either killed or you're disowned. So he fled through Turkey. Well, the cool thing is they are all now being housed and have very, very low rent in a place called I can never pronounce this word. Sandiamano. Yeah, thank you. It's a Franciscan monastery and retreat in Danville. So this Catholic monastery, this order, has taken in these 4 Muslim refugees. They literally take them to mosque every day. They go and pray with them at mosque. I mean, it's absolutely beautiful what this order is doing. And you can bet that every one of those refugees on Skype is telling what an amazing place that they're being housed by these brothers. It's very clear it's Catholic. There's lots of, crucifixes around. I mean, and they are so appreciative and so grateful. And they're on this track. They want to learn English. They want to get a job. They want to go to school. It's really, really incredible. So
what you do, is it English?
Yes.
Or?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they take a formal English as a second language class at an adult center, and then I come in and we do conversation, we practice reading articles and talking about it. I kind of answer questions they might have about grammar that they learned they didn't understand, because it's easier one-on-one or in a group of 4 people to kind of talk about things and ask and feel the freedom to ask, rather than in a group of 20 people and everybody's different language levels.
I think that is so beautiful.
Yeah.
That you do that with your time.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Sweet, thank you.
So if you did not think she was crazy before, listen to this.
Oh no, it gets better. If you weren't sure at this point.
Yeah. So tomorrow you're going to actually take a plane somewhere and do something again.
I am.
What are you doing?
So I leave tomorrow night to go to New Zealand. So I'm doing Cook Strait, which is between the North and the South Island, and it's a little shorter than English Channel. It's 18 miles. It's a little sharky. I don't know the behaviors of those sharks, so I got to do some quick research on that. The currents can be pretty gnarly there, and the wind can be pretty gnarly. But it's talk about being invested. The guy who runs the swim is totally invested in your success. He's in a Zodiac, and he's there the whole time. So it's going to be a beautiful swim. I'm really, really excited about it. And then do a little traveling. I've never been to New Zealand before, and I'm sure I'll be stopping at every beautiful lake and wanting to go swim. And it's going to be a slow progress around because I keep stopping. Like, wait, stop the car.
So why Cook Strait?
It's such a good question. It's one of the things, it's an organized swim, which makes it a lot easier. So kind of like comparing it to when I was trying to do Monterey Bay, like there was no structure around it. We kind of created that. But this one has structure. first of all, it's so important that someone knows the water. You know, they know the tides, they know how to read it, they can predict. And it's an adventure, and I love doing it. I love having a group of people that are going with me. My nephew is going with me. Aaron's going with me.
Oh,
and,
so you're leaving tomorrow too? Yeah, that's wonderful that you're here.
Yeah. So it's so I love like creating that kind of community around it, and it's just to me it's a lot of fun. I love doing it. I will admit though, after the swim, I'm taking the year off because I've been doing this for like 7 years straight. I really do need to kind of give my system a rest. So I think I'll do yoga for a month and then, you know, kind of let
Hang out.
hang out.
Hang out.
Exactly. Shed some muscle.
Yeah. Wow, that is amazing.
So I'm excited.
Yeah. So we've talked about courage and so on. And I mean, I will never swim the English Channel, right? But there are many other ways I can be courageous.
Yes.
And I really believe that courageous is contagious. Like if we see people being courageous around us, we are sort of inspired to be courageous ourselves.